Hello and welcome to Clickbait. I am Matt and today we're going to be talking about some photos which this morning have broken the internet. These were done by a photographer called Christopher Anderson, who I wasn't aware of until today, and are basically an object lesson in why when you hire a photographer you make sure you're nice to them and you make sure they like you, because this guy clearly did not like his subjects very much and they've gone worldwide for it. So this is an interesting little critique of these photos that he's done for Vanity Fair and the White House, and as a photographer he has disemboweled these people. This is just horrible what he's done. Now, looking at some of the comments online, going through the various sort of social platforms, a lot of people who aren't photographers are going, well, this guy's clearly a hack, he's a terrible photographer, he doesn't know what he's doing. I've had a quick Google. Christopher Anderson, really good photographer. Apart from the New York Times Magazine, Esquire, Vanity Fair, obviously, a lot of top name fashion companies. He's a very, very well established, well respected, extremely good photographer. And he does an awful lot of portraiture and an awful lot of very, very tight portrait. That's kind of his thing, is tight portraits. So he knows exactly how to light a shot and he knows exactly how to pose a person to get the image that he wants. So everything you see in these photos is not accidental, and he has made the White House Chiefs of Staff look like awful, awful people just by the way he's posed them and lit them. It's very, very clever. It's very clear that he didn't like these people very much at all. Although in the interview he does say he was very neutral, he was very balanced about what he was doing, but the pictures say otherwise. So I actually went out and took a subscription to Vanity Fair this morning just so I could have a proper look at these things, and wow, that was worth my $8.99 for the year, frankly, just for these pictures alone. This is the opening shot in the first issue, and this is the Chiefs of Staff gathered around the table, gathered around Susie Wiles, who is the Chief of Staff. And apparently what they like to do is project an aura of toughness, thuggishness almost. They call themselves the junkyard dogs, you know, they're taking nothing from nobody kind of thing. So she's sat there in the middle, the centre of it all. That's why she's posed at the head of the table. But she looks very small there. She's sat the long way away on this great long table, looking a little tiny. Trump apparently calls her the Ice Maiden, so I don't know how much respect he actually has for her, giving her that name. We've got Stephen Miller on the right hand side. He's kind of pushed off to the side a little bit. He's looking out of the photo, so he's a little bit disconnected with everyone else. Also, the way he's posed him, it's not very flattering with his legs, but it's kind of emphasised his paunch. So really, really unkind bit of thing. If he'd turned him slightly, got him to do up his jacket or something, you could have hidden his belly a bit, but no, it's kind of emphasised his gut, which is not a kind thing to do to a subject. And he's got this usual kind of cold squint. They've all got this weird, I think I'm hard, I'm doing my half eyes closed squint thing, which makes them look a little bit like they're constipated, which is quite funny. Then you've got these two behind Susie Wiles, who don't look like they're politicians in their dark, ill-fitting suits and their dark ties. They look like a couple of bodyguards or bouncers who are just there purely for muscle behind her. They don't serve any intelligent purpose. They're just purely there as a bit of a, bit of hired muscle. Then you've got this guy stood by the door about to leave, like he's wandered into the photo shoot by mistake, and he's just about, so he's looking at the camera because he feels awkward. He's a bit like that guy who stumbled into the BBC News broadcast one time, and he was like a delivery guy, but he said yes when they said, are you so-and-so, and he got ushered straight into a studio to be interviewed about something he knew nothing about. He looks like that guy. Then you got Vance, the Vice President himself, but again, the way he's been put, he's on a chair which makes him look a lot lower and less important than the rest of the group. So he's been shuffled over to the side, he's pushed down, he's been sidelined, which in kind of the way that the American politics is at the moment, he actually is in real life. He's become not the most important person in the room by a long way. And then finally we've got Caroline Leavitt. She is like the press secretary, the mouthpiece, who presents them to the world on a day-to-day basis. But the way she's been positioned, she's sitting on the table, she's at the front, so she is the mouthpiece. She is the front-facing member of the team. However, they've got her facing against the camera. She's facing back against them, so she's more subservient to everyone else in the room than you, the viewer, or the camera. And she's just looking over her shoulder just to kind of make eye contact. But no, she's been pushed to one side, and she is very much their lapdog in this particular instance. This is all very, very carefully done. And having checked this photographer's profile and his other work, this wasn't accidental. This was all put there on purpose. I mean, if this was a new guy who'd never done a group shot before, he might have just scattered everyone around. It's his first wedding, and he's put everyone around the table because he didn't know any better, and then let the table kind of come into the foreground as a big element of the thing. You could say, okay, fair enough. He didn't know what he's doing. He can learn from these mistakes. But no, everyone is pushed to the back of the room, and then they're all kind of sidelined in their own special ways. The only one who's really looking like she's got any power here is Susie Wiles. Everyone else looks like a bit part character. So as she did the interview, that is kind of relevant. However, it does make the entire rest of the chiefs of staff, the cabinet, look like nobodies. They're just suit fillers. Now, I don't want to jump scare you, but Vance, this is not a flattering photo. Again, he's done this thing where he's kind of staring at the camera, that kind of half eye shut, semi-squint, trying to make himself look like he's staring you down. But again, he just looks a bit confused or a bit constipated. And you can see every single pore and blemish in his skin, the broken veins in his nose, the puffiness in his cheeks, the stubble in his cheeks. And you see flakes of skin and spots on his lip. He just looks tired. He looks broken. It's broken and he looks a bit confused. It's a really, really unflatteringly detailed photo. This is all shot on medium format digital, like ultra high resolution. I don't know what camera he's using. I suspect it might be either a Hasselblad or a Fuji, looking at this kind of detail. But he's lit the photo from the front and from above, so the shadow is casting under his eyebrows. It gives him kind of a cold look. It makes him look a bit like he wants to be a gangster. I imagine he told the subjects this is what he was doing, but they didn't really understand the power of the image that he was creating. But not as unpleasant as this guy, Stephen Miller. This is an incredible photo. Again, he will have told him, I'm going to light you dramatically from the side to give you some dramatic emphasis, make you look strong, powerful, this kind of thing. The lighting is a little bit unfavourable when you put it side by side with this photo of this other gentleman here, who didn't have the greatest of reputations. In fact, still doesn't. And they've got the same cold, dead stare. They've got the same dismissive look. He's wanted to look like a hard guy, a gangster almost, but he's wound up looking like one of the greatest monsters of history. And again, I'm sure this was completely intentional. Any photographer doing serious portrait work will have been aware of this photo and will have been aware of this guy's reputation and will have put the two together in his head and will have been planning this all along. This wasn't a mistake. Skimming through the rest of these photos, these guys look like middle management of some mid-tier company at a mid-tier mid-town hotel who are there for some kind of conference but don't really know what they're there for. They look lost. The background staging is very deliberate. They're put in front of things. You can understand the two plants, which look fake, either side of this guy, just framing him, except there's a statue behind him which is poking out. So everything is just a little bit cluttered, a little bit disjointed. This guy's staring out the window, but we can see bits of the cupboard. There's things on the cupboard. There's a bit of an alligator for some reason poking in the shot. You can see the plugs. It all just looks messy. It looks like he's trying to tell a story with these pictures that these people don't really know what they're there for and what they're doing. This guy looks confused. He's staring off into the middle distance like someone's asked him a difficult question and he doesn't know the answer. Miller again, I get a feeling he particularly didn't like Stephen Miller. Again, this shot is emphasising his gut that's hanging over his trousers. He's like a slim guy who's put on a paunch in recent years, and so he's put him in a position where his jacket's open, his belly's hanging forward, his legs are open towards the camera. Really unflattering pose. You never do that. And he's just subservient to a big photo. He just looks lost. It's a deliberately awkward photo. In fact, all of these photos are deliberately awkward. They want to make the viewer feel like these people aren't comfortable. We've got Vance again, and it's a really cleverly staged area to put it in. A little bit of a couch, which is a minor nod to his reputation. He's up against the wall like he's waiting for something. He's not in the room as the centre of attention. He's pushed up against the wall as background, just waiting. He's in the wings. He's stood by the light switch in the thermostat so he can just do odd jobs. And the fact the American flag is in the frame, but only as the tiniest bit. Like America has become less important than the people in this building. Also, there's like a tatty bit of skirting board down here that hasn't been repaired properly. It's really, really interesting staging. And again, Caroline Walsh, she's like the most important member of the team, but she's stuck by a light switch in a corner of a room. Again, very much sidelined, because the most important person in this big team is always playing second fiddle to the main character, who's elsewhere. Just skimming through quickly, there's two more. Marco Rubio. This picture looks like a 1950s mobster. Looking at the way this is lit, the lighting is straight onto him, but he's turned his face so we've got a little bit of shadow. But it looks like it's stubble or something around his face, but it's not. It's like black heads or pucker marks in his skin. So it's really, really unflattering. You can see every line, every wrinkle in his face. And the way he's got his eyes turning away from the camera, it's like making him look a bit shifty. Again, a bit like a gangster, which maybe is what Rubio wanted to look like. But it doesn't look like someone you trust. It makes him look a little bit sleazy, a little bit dodgy, like someone you just don't really want to be spending time with. And the picture that's got the most attention, in fact there's two really. I'll start off with the wide shot. Caroline Leavitt. This is her full frame shot, which is, again, cleverly posed. It looks random. It looks just stand there and I'll snap you, I can't be bothered. It's actually beautifully lit. You can see you've got a couple of soft boxes that are lighting it mostly from this side, but a fill from the left. But you've got all the details that make it wrong. First of all, her suit isn't particularly well fitting. It's too tight around the middle. It's just not right. And she looks a little bit fake, that whole kind of fake, over made up, over enhanced, surgically look thing they've got going on. Doesn't really work. But things like the chair. You would normally have a chair facing either into the frame to bring your eye into the subject, or you'd have it naturally facing towards the fireplace. But no, she's next to an empty chair. The chair is the power, and she is subservient again to that. She's less important. That's how they've made it. The American flag is just draped on as an afterthought. So the America that they are apparently serving is less important than they are. That's what the picture is saying. And you got all this clutter in the background. You wouldn't necessarily have that. There should be a stylist doing that. I'm surprised the White House people didn't have a stylist or a marketing or PR person who was, checking this stuff as they went along. But no, you've got the two lamps. Again, the lamps are a little bit distracting and a little bit out of character for the rest of the room. In fact, the whole lot is some mismatch of styles. The room looks very messy indeed. But you've got this little vase just poking out behind her shoulder and these random photos. And someone pointed out this print here's like $12.95 from some website, including the gold frame. So the whole thing looks like it's stuff that's been bunged in there in a spare room that people have thrown things in just because they needed somewhere to put them. So it's very, very, very unflattering indeed. But then the killer of the unflattering is this shot here. This woman's 28 years old, bear in mind. And a couple of years ago, photos of her looked significantly clearer skinned. But here you can see every blemish. He's done it again deliberately, and the lighting is also makes her look very cold. The blue lighting makes her look very cold. And the orange mark on the nose, that's a little bit indicative. But the thing is that you can see every pore in such precise detail. It's very, very unflattering indeed. But it's emphasised. The lip filler injection marks all around her lips. I mean, who does that? Her makeup artist should have been covering those up, should have blended them somehow. But nothing's been done. The whole thing is shot to give the impression of a slapdash operation with people you wouldn't like. As a photographer, the guy has done an incredible job of quietly sending a message, giving an opinion without ever saying a word. I mean, this is photography as power. This is why photography is such an incredibly powerful propaganda tool. These could wind up being some of the most influential photos of this team ever to leave the White House. And the incredible thing is, they let it go. There was no one saying, can I look at the back of the camera please? Can I just check I look all right in that? Or if they did, they looked at it and said, yeah, I look good there. I'm genuinely astonished that the subjects or their PR people didn't step in at any point, because this makes them look awful. All these shots just make the White House look drab and untidy, and the people look lost and confused. I am genuinely amazed. I'm impressed. As a photographer commenting on another photographer's work, I am really impressed that this guy's done this and got away with it. This in print now. Quoting Ian Anderson, he said in an interview about this job, I see my job as a responsibility to portray what I encounter. So he's kind of saying what he's showing just here. And this is very, very telling to end this video on. When we finished, he said, Stephen Miller came up to me and said, you know, you have a lot of power in the discretion you use to be kind to someone in your photographs. Anderson recalled, and I looked at him and I said, you know, you do too. And I don't know how much he related to that. Anderson added. So he, I think, was very, very aware of what he was doing. The interview is a whole other thing. That's also a mind-blowing interview with Susie Wiles talking about her time within the White House. But these photos are incredible. If they've been shot by anyone else of anyone else, the picture editor would have just thrown an absolute wobbly and sent them back to do it again, or just never used them again. But because of the way they've shot this so intentionally, this magazine is now selling like hotcakes. It is the biggest selling magazine on the newsstands around the world right now, I'm sure. So yes, this is what photography can do. This is the power of photography. This is just such a remarkable photo set to come out that I really couldn't ignore it. So do you think I've read this right? Has he actually deliberately set out to make these photos awkward to look at? Things like these slightly off-angle lines in the background, so things feel uncomfortable to look at. Is this a lack of talent? I don't think so. What do you reckon? Let me know in the comments. And join me again next time. Well, who knows what we're talking about? Something with cameras though. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. You have to do it. It's the rules. Goodbye.